Excuse me. Excuse me. May I have your attention, please? We cannot pass out any type of literature in the gym. So anyone that's passing out literature, please refrain from doing this. Thank you.
So Robin is here, so I don't know how you want to seat her. Okay. Where you want to seat her?
I'm gonna sit her 2 and Bill 5.
Number 2? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. We are about to get started. Can I have my candidates? Test, test.
Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Doug. Doug. Senator Hutchinson. We're going to, good evening. We're going to start with the national anthem and a presentation of the colors by the Colin Powell Naval Sea Cadets from School District 159 in Matteson, Illinois. So can everybody please rise? So good evening again. Welcome to the second Congressional District debate here held at Ridge Central High School. My name is Wendell Mosby. I'm the coordinator for GoTV Cook County and also the co-chair for the Chicago Young and Powerful group. Both organizations have similar focuses, with one being to develop leaders of tomorrow. Young and Powerful group also has city chapters in Washington, D.C. and also New York City. I'm also a graduate here of Ridge Central High School, 1996, so I'm very excited to be here back home. When I was a senior here at Ridge Central, Congressman Jackson, in his first term, came to visit us here at Ridge Central. I was a vice president of student council, and his visit here got me very excited to continue in public service. I'm also a trustee at Prairie State Community College, and I'm very excited to be here to represent the Southland and also the 2nd Congressional District. So I'd be remiss. Yesterday there was a young lady who was murdered, 15 years old, at King High School. That young lady and a group of students participated in an inauguration event in Washington, D.C. They also participated at the Young and Powerful Group's political forum. In the next coming days, the Young and Powerful Group will put out a National Day of Action. We have to get beyond the rhetoric, but we need to talk about prevention. And so tonight, we hope that our candidates will be able to share their positions with you all. There are 5 topics that will be discussed tonight. The first topic being public education. The second topic being leadership and ethics. The third topic we'll talk about is housing. The fourth topic, we'll talk about jobs and economy. And the 5th topic, we'll talk about violence prevention. It's a hot topic right now, and I'm sure everybody wants to know where these candidates stand. So our moderator for this evening is Gaynor Hall from WGN and COTV News. And Gaynor will go over the debate format, and I hope for a lively debate from the candidates that we have here this evening. So thank you very much. And one note as well, that this debate is also being streamed live by CanTV at youtube.com/ShyCanTV. And if you are on Twitter, please use the hashtag SouthlandCD. That's the hashtag Southland. We have 2 students that participated in our town hall meeting over by the other bleachers. They'll be tweeting all evening. And so we hope to get as many people engaged in the social media atmosphere as well. So once again, thank you all. Gaynor.
All right. I'll just talk from here. Thanks, Wendell. So excited to be here with you for this critical exercise in civic engagement. It's going to be a good night, a good debate. First, let's lay down the ground rules. We'll begin with opening statements. You'll have 1 minute each for that. Then we'll move on to our 5 topics. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and at the end of each round, after everyone has had an opportunity to respond, then we'll have a rebuttal period. That's a minute long for each candidate. We'll finish up with closing statements. A few things, just want to remind our audience to be respectful and keep things as quiet as possible so that we can hear what our candidates have to say. And to the candidates, please be respectful of our time restraints. My friend Kim here is going to give you some cues, 30 seconds, and when you need to wrap things up. And I apologize in advance if I have to respectfully cut you off, because we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to respond. So the candidates picked beforehand to determine their order. We are going to begin with opening statements. Mr. Ernest Fenton is first. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to participate. I don't know if we can. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in tonight's forum, and I thank all of you for taking time out to be here. And my father, I'll start off by saying that my father taught me something very important very early on, and that is, whenever you come to the table, make certain that you bring more to the table than you actually eat. And so that's my endeavor, that's my goal for tonight. So you've already given me something by your being here, and I hope to give you something more in my sharing tonight. Again, I am attorney Ernest B. Fenton. I have already been doing the work that needs to be done in the 2nd District. A lot of you perhaps may know me as the stop foreclosure attorney, the consumer advocate. Hopefully you've heard me on WVON on Saturdays or Sunday mornings on 106.3. In my 5 years, or over the past 5 years of my practice, I've had the honor of counseling over 20,000 individuals in the Southland area regarding some of the more important issues that we all have been affected by, either personally or directly or indirectly rather. Foreclosure, being consumed in debt, medical bills, joblessness.
All right, Mr. Fenton,
Evictions.
I got to cut you off. You can pick it up later.
I
okay?
appreciate it. That was very nice and sweet. Thank you.
Just, candidates, keep your eyes over here. So Kim is giving you cues. Robin, you're up next. Thank you. You have 1 minute. This is just the introduction. So.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing us the opportunity to be here. My name is Robin Kelly, and I am working extremely hard to be your next congressperson. I'm running because I know the 2nd Congressional District has a lot of challenges. Economic development, underemployment, no employment, infrastructure needs, transportation, struggling schools in some areas, and of course, as was said, we have got to stop the violence. But despite all of those things, I have great hope, and I want to be a leader in that great hope. I want us to be a 2nd Congressional District I know we can be. That's an economic engine that has highly skilled workers, that businesses will want to stay here or relocate here. I want to be a 2nd Congressional District where families feel comfortable here because there are safe neighborhoods and good and safe schools from Chicago to Kankakee and Kankakee to Chicago. I want people to be able to work, live, shop close to home, be able to play close to home and not have to drive the longest commutes in many cases in the United States. And I feel that we can be that type of district, and I feel that I will be that type of leader to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you. That was former State Rep Robin Kelly.
Good evening. I'm Debbie Halverson, also a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. I used to be a state senator. I spent 2 years in Congress, and this is a brand new district. Not only is it the old 2nd Congressional District, it's part of what I had in the 11th Congressional District. You're going to hear a lot from the candidates tonight. I'm excited to be here, and it's been a very spirited campaign so far. As most of you have probably heard from commercials, there's been one commercial, it's about me, and hopefully I'll have a chance to talk about it later. What you need to do is go to our websites, because you're going to hear a lot. And it's going to be confusing because there are more candidates than just the 5 of us that are here. So DebbieHalverson.com to find out more about us, because what I think the #1 issue here is jobs. Because if we could do more about creating jobs and economic development, good paying jobs, creating the advanced manufacturing and logistics jobs that we need here, connecting the rail, the air, the water, everything that we have right here at our fingertips, we could be creating the advanced manufacturing, good-paying jobs that you all deserve.
Thank you. State Senator Toy Hutchison.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Toy Hutchinson, and I'm the state senator of the 40th District. I represent from here all the way down to Kankakee right now. I'm a candidate in the 2nd Congressional District race because I believe in this district. And I grew up here. I grew up in Olympia Fields. I went to high school right here at Ridge Central. And I remember full operating malls and not a whole lot of blight in strip malls that dot Lincoln Highway as we walked up and down those streets. This is the community that produced me. And I am so proud to fight for it every single day. I do think that what we do need to concentrate on, first and foremost, above anything else, is getting our people employed. We have the highest unemployment rates. We have the longest commute times. We have some of the biggest and most pressing challenges we can face as it relates to educating our kids and getting to our full potential as a district. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do, and it's not going to be easy. But we're here to fight for what this district could be, not for as bad as things are today. It's about what we could be tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming.
And finally, Chicago Alderman Anthony Beal.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Beal, and I'm a 14-year alderman of the city of Chicago, and I'm running to be your congressman because I am a job creator. I have a history and a track record of creating jobs in the city of Chicago. The biggest thing that's plaguing the 2nd Congressional District is jobs. I am the only candidate that has a comprehensive plan from one end of the district to the other. We're going to make sure that we build that third airport that's going to create 15,000 jobs just to start. And then once it's fully built, it's going to create 150,000 jobs. But we're not going to stop there. We're going to connect our roads, our rail, and our ports with the third airport in order to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the 2nd Congressional District. When you talk about crime, the only way you're really going to combat crime is to put people to work and give them jobs. My record and my background is, you know, we can stand on my record. We had a fight in the city of Chicago a few years ago called the Walmart fight. We won that fight, and we're creating 4,000 jobs off the Bishop Ford Expressway off of 111th Street.
All right, Alderman Beal, thank you for that. So the first topic is leadership and ethics. And here's the question. Given the history of 2nd District congressmen, if you are elected, what steps will you take to bring honesty, integrity, and fair representation to the district and ensure voters that you will not follow in the footsteps of your predecessors? First up, Ernest Minton.
Thank you once again. Well, I don't think I need 2 minutes to respond to that one. As it relates to leadership and ethics, and my making certain that I do not follow in the footsteps of my predecessors, I'll simply be myself. I have a history of integrity. I have a history of following the canons of ethics. I'm an attorney. I must abide by certain rules and regulations. I've been practicing law for 13 years. I'm a military veteran. It requires that one be ethical. It requires that one be moral. And that's who I am as a foundational issue. So what I'll do is be an example, and I'll continue to do what I've always done, and just be me. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly.
I have always carried myself as a woman of character and a woman of integrity, and that's what I will continue to do. Just be Robin Kelly. I'm honest. Hopefully my track record has shown that as the state representative in this area, working in the treasurer's office and working under Tony Pretwinkle as the chief operating officer. It has nothing to do with running for office. I'm just going to be myself, have always carried myself as a woman of principle and values.
Leadership and ethics starts with the person. And when you know what you stand for, it's easy. When I was in the state Senate, one of the first bills that I passed was the ethics bill. And our president was on a bipartisan panel, passed the first bill in ethics that we had in centuries. And I worked with him on that, and once he went on to be in the U.S. Senate, I worked on ethics bills. Because I believe that in Illinois, we were the Wild West. And if we're not going to put and do for ourselves what we think other people should do, what is there? And there is a saying, your word is your bond. And that's really all we have in politics, is if you can't be trusted, then you have nothing. One of my favorite books is called The Speed of Trust. And the more somebody can trust you, the more you can get done. And I think as we go forward, trust and confidence is going to be the new currency as we go forward. Congress, their approval ratings are in the single digits. And we need to send somebody back there that is going to talk and have relationships to get things done.
Senator Hutchinson. All right, we're going to try to keep things to a minimum here. We want to keep the debate rolling. All right, if you could take your seat, sir, please take your seat so that we can continue with the debate. Senator Hutchinson, if you will continue, please. Please, sir, take your seat. Again, we want our audience to be respectful so that we may continue with our debate. Thank you very much. Senator Hutchinson, you have the floor.
Thank you. You know, I know a lot of really, really good people who dedicate their lives to public service, and right now we don't get to hear about that very often. Now, mostly what you hear that they're all liars and crooks and thieves, and we've got to do something to change whether or not a kid grows up and says, when I grow up, that's what I want to do, or that's what I want to be. One of the first things that happened to me when I came into the state Senate was I was in the middle of an impeachment trial. It's the first time I spoke on the microphone. We were impeaching a governor for the first time in our history. It was a really sad day. And we had to make a lot of tough decisions after that. We did campaign finance reforms. I voted to cut my own pay. We reduced office travel, budget expenses, all kinds of things to do more with less. But the biggest thing was that I knew I couldn't ask my constituents to do more with less or to make tight, changes if I couldn't lead by example. And I knew every single day that I went down there that I have 3 kids at home that are old enough to read the paper. And I need them to know that I am who they think I am when I come back home. So trusting in our elected officials right now, we're in a situation where we have so many problems to solve, and they require governmental solutions right at the moment when nobody trusts the government. And I don't think there's anybody up here that believes that we can't all work hard to make sure that we can change the paradigm about that. All of us need to pull in the same direction because this government doesn't belong to us. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to all of us. The fact that you're here tonight says that you want to be engaged and participatory in a system that belongs to you. And we have to take that back. We just have to.
Thank you. Alderman Beal.
Dana, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The question was on leadership and ethics. Given the history of 2nd District Congressmen, if you're elected, what steps will you take to bring honesty, integrity, and fair representation back to the district and ensure voters that you will not follow in the footsteps of your predecessors?
Okay, well, first of all, I have a 14-year spotless track record as an elected official in the city of Chicago. As far as leadership is concerned, the very first project I implemented when I first became alderman, and I built 4 of the state-of-the-art baseball facilities in the heart of the city of Chicago in the 9th Ward. I'm still a baseball coach today in my spare time. I'm a high school baseball coach, volunteer, and I'm also help run my Little League organization. I'm a role model. I don't just rely on everyone else to do what they're supposed to do. I step up and I do it. I have a proven track record as far as implementing, being a role model, and making things happen. We need to make sure that the next congressman that leads this particular district leads with integrity and has a spotless record going in and has a proven track record going in. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not rocket scientists. When you look at my track record as being alderman and what I've been able to accomplish working with my seniors, working with the kids, fighting for education, fighting for public safety, this is the time that we have to make sure we send somebody there with the experience, the dedication, and the know-how to lead this district. So look at my record, look what I've done, and you'll see 14 years of spotless track record. That's the kind of leadership we need. That's the kind of integrity we need, and someone who's going to give back more than what they're put in. And I'm giving back every single day by leading by example. Thank you.
All right. We're going to keep things moving here, and we're going to move on to the second topic, which is housing. During the Great Recession, so many Southland families saw their life savings wiped out. While big banks got big help from the government, families lost their homes to foreclosure, and that problem persists today. What would you do to address housing concerns for the people of the 2nd District? This time, we are going to start with Ms. Kelly.
I think it's very important before someone buys a home that they make sure they have the proper counseling. I think that with all the subprime lending that went on that caused all of this foreclosure, I think that was one of the problems, that people engaged in contracts they didn't understand. Oh, sorry. Okay. They didn't understand and they were taken advantage of. And I also think that banks need to be held responsible. There should be no safe harbor for banks that make bad loans that they know that they're already making because they have people's credit history. But I would be for the HARP program, and I would also support the extension of the mortgage program so that when people sell their homes, that they don't have to go back to paying the taxes that they've been relieved of now. That if they sell their homes short-term or refinance, that they're not penalized. But we have to have that law extended for that not to happen. But I really believe in outreach and counseling before people buy homes, and also no safe harbor for financial institutions that know they are making loans that people really cannot afford.
Well, while I was in Congress, there was a bill, Wall Street Reform, that I voted for. That still has about 100 pieces of it that still needs rules promulgated. But it was a very important piece of legislation that the President wanted and we supported. But it also, I want to stipulate, there's a very important thing that we need to discuss here. We cannot put our local community banks in with the Wall Street Reform, too big to fail banks. And a lot of people like to call and put all banks in one big pot. And it was a very difficult decision that many of us made because our local community banks, who are the good guys, need the flexibility to make individual decisions for all of you because they're making decisions every day to loan into the community for good purposes. But we also need to make it easier for all of you to refinance. I don't know about you, but we can't refinance our home, no matter how hard we try. We need to make it easier for people to refinance. And then there's a program called a graceful exit. If you can't keep your home, we need to help you get out of it. But if you want to keep it, we need to help you modify that loan. There are all kinds of programs, and there's a website on Obama's website. President has a great website to do that. So there are more programs that we need to do, but we need more outreach so you know about these programs. And that's why I have somebody in my office when I was in Congress taking care of those programs. We need more of that. You need to be able to refinance your house. You need to be able to work with your bank, but we need to be harder on the too big to fail. And if it were up to me, I'd reinstate the Glass-Steagall, which separates the banks so that we don't have too big to fail banks.
All right, thank you. Senator Hutchinson, thank you.
This is something that we've actually lived in my family. When my grandfather had a stroke, he went and refinanced the house with a very big loan with a very big balloon payment. They had A1 credit and their house was almost paid off. And it was a prime example of a subprime loan, a loan officer that took advantage of two people who were in a pretty difficult situation. It's difficult to say that we are probably in the process of still losing that house. And that's the house I grew up in. Now, when we talk, all of us talk about the problems about what foreclosure does to communities. You have to look into the faces of people who've experienced this. When you are trying to refinance a house, even though you make your payments every single month and they will not refinance that house, we're in a situation, I can't refinance my house either because it's worth half as much as I bought it for 10 years ago. We have to make it so that people who want to stay in the house and can stay in the house or making provisions to make those payments are allowed to stay because we're decimating communities. There's nothing in the world like knowing the house in front of you and on either side of you are both vacant and you have kids playing in the area, and what that draws to it affects everybody's property values. So making sure that we can also rewrite loans, like to sell houses for what they're actually worth today instead of what the loans are worth for. In order to refinance these loans, we got to be able to do what the market would bear right now. There are millions of families that are in this position right now. And it's going to require federal action at the highest levels to make sure that we put the resources where we need it the most, especially in these areas where the foreclosure rates have decimated entire blocks. Now, when you go to run comps to decide how much your house is worth, you have to add in those compulsory sales, the ones that are sold at short sale, the ones that are sold at foreclosure. And when you add that in, it completely changes the value of everybody else's home property values. So this is something
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Alderman Beal.
Thank you. As far as housing is concerned, Allgale Gardens, I've rehabbed 1,300 affordable housing units in the Allgale Garden Murray community to the tune of $245 million. We were able to leverage federal funds in order to bring back to the 9th Ward to rehab that entire facility, and we still have 600 units left to go, and we're working towards that. NSP funds, neighborhood stabilization funds, are also federal funds that Barack Obama set aside to stabilize the communities that were hit hardest by the foreclosure crisis. In 1998, there was a study done in the 60628 zip code that showed that that community, which is my community, has the oldest community in the nation. So my community was hit the hardest as far as the foreclosure crisis because the predatory lenders preyed on my seniors. So when the economy went into the tank, my seniors were left holding the bag. So when the experts said we were in a recession, I had already predicted we were in a depression. So we went right to work with those NSP funds to stabilize our community. We were able to leverage that. But we also took it a step further. I have built more senior housing in the 9th Ward than any other alderman in the city of Chicago because I knew I had the oldest community in the nation and I knew I had to do something for my seniors. So we went right to work to make sure that we built more senior housing to make sure my seniors were in a place where they didn't have to worry about the foreclosure crisis anymore. So again, we have demonstrated that leadership to bring the housing stock back, and we're not done. We still have a lot of work to do. But when you rehab 1,300 public housing units to the tune of $245 million, built more senior housing than any other alderman in the city of Chicago, and leveraged and being able to utilize the neighborhood stabilization funds, that's the kind of leadership we need to go after the problems that's plaguing our community. I've done it, I've proven it, and we're going to continue to implement it.
Mr. Fenton.
May I have my minute back? No. I've saved homeowners more than $20 million over the past 3 years in the work that I do at my practice. The first thing I'm going to do when I get to Congress, I'm going to fight to reduce principal balances on mortgages that are underwater. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Before I look for the restroom even. The Home Affordable Modification Program was intended to assist 4 million homeowners. To date, it is recorded that approximately 1.2 million homeowners have received assistance. The second thing I'm going to do when I get to Congress is find the other 2.7 million homeowners who deserve a modification pursuant to the agreement entered into by the big banks and our government in consideration for $1.2 trillion that they got. Guess from who? Raise your hand if you gave to that $1.2 trillion. Second thing I'm going to do, 2.7 million homeowners deserve a modification that they have not received. Home Affordable Refinance Program intended to assist homeowners. Program guidelines, too restrictive. Why? First off, if your home is more than 125% underwater, then you don't qualify. Most homes in the Southland area are more than 25% underwater. Also, too restrictive. Why? Because you could not have been delinquent on a payment in the past 12 months. We need to extend or change the requirements as it relates to the Home Affordable Refinance Program. My platform is founded on one simple principle that relates to what? Everything. Stability in housing affects more than homes. How so? Jobs, crime, education. Broken down communities mean no jobs, because you can't attract or support local businesses. It means more crime, dilapidated structures in your communities. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fenton. And here's where we get our bonus minute. So we'll start with you, Senator Hutchinson. You can add, because I cut you off there in the middle of that. So you can continue on. You have 1 more minute to speak on housing.
That's where I was going to go. That's what ends up happening in communities. That when you have broken down structures, when you have vacant houses, that affects what kids are in the school. That affects their ability to go to school. That affects all the things that local municipalities have to do. That's how you pay for police and fire. It's how you pay for roads. It's how you pay for libraries. If the property tax base is eroded, the community is eroded. And when you talk about stability in neighborhoods and how to reduce part of those things that go into that cycle of violence, it does start with the home. It starts with the neighborhood. It starts with the block. It starts with what we see on our streets. And that point about needing to refinance these loans, to modify these loans, is the single best thing we could do for the millions of homeowners who know that they want to stay in those houses. And where the communities need them to stay, the neighbors need them to stay, they, for their own safety, security, health, and everything else, need to stay in their homes. That's the single best thing we can do, is to make sure that these underwater homeowners have a chance to modify their loans.
Debbie Halverson.
The only other 2 things I was going to add was I met with a group of homeowners, and the things that they suggested, which were really good ideas, because I don't think any of us have cornered the ideas or good ideas, that if you're having trouble and the bank takes over your house, rent it back so that you can stay in it. Pay the bank rent, because they were saying that they don't want to move out of their house because it just sits there vacant and they have to go find somewhere else to live. So they want to stay in their house, so they want to pay rent. They thought that was a good idea. The other thing was, if they're trying to modify their loan and they want to reduce the payment, take some of that payment and put it at the end of the loan so that they can refinance. So there's a lot of different creative things that we could be doing to keep people in their homes, because we all know short sales don't work and empty homes don't work, and it brings everybody else's property values down.
All right. Robin Kelly.
As Congresswoman, one thing I would do is market what is out there better, because I know a lot of people don't know the law library in the Markham Courthouse and also the law library downtown in the Daly Center. They actually have places where you can go for housing counseling. They can't give you legal advice, but they can connect you to what the resources are. And that's some of the problem, that people don't even realize where they can go. The other thing is, I would try to help to cut the red tape, because when I speak with housing counselors, even the programs that have been established, that is so hard for consumers to take advantage of the programs because of all the red tape. So that's something that I would work on too, to help the constituents cut through the red tape so they can take advantage of the programs.
Anthony Beal. Okay. Ernest Fenton, do you have anything to add on the topic of housing before we move on? You have 1 more minute.
1 minute? You're so kind. Mr. Beal said that Altgeld Gardens was benefited by the Neighborhood Stabilization Act, but as I walked through Altgeld Gardens just last week, it looked like a ghost town. Strange to me. Ms. Halverson said that homeowners should be allowed to rent the properties back. I think that's a great idea. But the only problem with that is, as a practical matter, the banks require that the properties be vacant prior to placing them on the market. There's only one person here who can adequately address this issue of housing. That would be me. What's strange in all of this is that none of the people sitting on this panel have ever sought my counsel. Thank you.
All right, Alderman Beal, an opportunity to respond to that.
Thank you so much. Well, let me just say this, and I'm going to take my minute because I answered all the housing questions as far as what I have done. And in my statement, I said, yes, Allgale Gardens we rehab 1,300 units. But I think I still said we had 600 left to go. So those 600 still need to be rehabbed. So we're still working in progress. So again, I'm not going to sit here and let someone just fire away and try to twist my words and try to mislead you all as far as what I have done. I'm proud of my record as far as standing up for housing, affordable housing, and trying to rehab the housing stock within my ward. One of the things we need to understand is an alderman is a training ground for a congressman. We deal with housing, education, and public safety every single day. So we're going to continue to do that. But again, next time you walk through Allgale Gardens, look and see the 1,300 rehab units, and then look at the other way and see 600 vacant units ready to be rehabbed. Thank you so much.
All right. We're going to move on to our next round, which is public education. And here's the question. How will you ensure that each and every child in the 2nd District has equal access to a quality public education and equal opportunity to continue their education at the collegiate level regardless of their financial backgrounds? For this round, we will go to our number 3 first, and that is Debbie Halverson. 2 minutes.
So equal opportunity is pretty much the bottom line of what I talk about everywhere I go. Because if everybody were to have an equal opportunity, and whether that's education, jobs, the ability to have a roof over their heads, we would all be a better place to live. You know, I grew up, my mom hates when I say this, poor. But I think eating mayonnaise sandwiches for lunch because you didn't know that you could put meat in between this bread, free and reduced lunch at school, but I didn't have the opportunities a lot of people did. And we worked harder at that, and I watched other people automatically have better opportunities. So I've said everywhere I go that it shouldn't matter what zip code you live in, you should have the same opportunities, and we've seen that here in the south suburbs as we served on the state level. Robin, Toy, and myself, we all served in the state legislature. And we've all watched the disparities with public education out in the south suburbs. And it's not fair that in Harvey, you pay $16 for every $100 of taxed assessed evaluation, where in New Trier they probably pay $7 because they have the businesses and everything else. That's a state issue. But what we can do in Congress, and what I've done, is to make sure that we have the community colleges and the universities and what money we can bring here. And in the plan and in what we've worked on, and how we have increased the Pell Grants. And we took the middleman out of the loan business so that every penny that comes in goes directly to the students so that we can make sure you all get an equal opportunity to go to college and have that American dream. I couldn't go to college until my kids went to college. So I'll add later.
All right. Toy Hutchinson.
I'm a product of the public school systems here. My children right now are in public school right now. One of the things that I'd say at the federal level is that I'm not a very big fan of No Child Left Behind. I think that program, it was based too much on punitive measures that really relied or over-relied on standardized testing. And standardized testing doesn't give an accurate picture of who a child is. That's how they did on that day at that moment in time. And I don't believe that we need to be teaching to the test. But I am a proponent of race to the top, and one of the things that we were able to do at the state Senate level was pass Senate Bill 7 so that we could compete for the race to the top funds that were announced from the U.S. Department of Education, bringing funds to schools who were working towards creating a common core to make sure that teachers had better abilities to get trained and evaluations, that things were not just based on longevity, that there were other things that went into tenure discussion, and that was agreed upon by a whole lot of different people that normally never agree. That was education advocates, those were labor unions, those were parents, those were people who all had a vested interest to make sure that our schools are as good as they can be. Now, at the end of the day, if you have a kid that comes from a school where there's no extracurricular activities, there's not enough counselors or social workers, you don't know whether or not there's an extra or after school care program so that kid has someplace safe to go from 3 to 6 by the time a parent gets home from work, between the time a kid gets out of school and a parent comes home from work. And you compare that child that has been given the world, access to all kinds of different resources and things at that school, and then you try to treat them the same. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. Because the kind of education you get should not be based on where you accidentally happen to be born. Every child in this state deserves a world-class education. Every child. And that's going to take all kinds of people working together to make sure that that happens. Even people who sometimes don't agree. If we put the focus on the kids instead of the fights between the adults, we actually might be able to get something done.
Anthony Beal.
Thank you. Again, being an advocate for education, a few years ago, the city of Chicago voted for 3 new high schools to be built: Northside Prep, Peyton, and Gwendolyn Brooks. Gwendolyn Brooks happens to be in my ward. Northside Prep and Peyton were finished to completion. But when it came to Gwendolyn Brooks, they pulled the funding back after it being 75% complete. So a few years later, we will continue to fight for the money to finish that school, and Gwendolyn Brooks is the number 5 school as far as academics in the city of Chicago. Number 23, I think, in the entire state. But it was only 75% complete. Well, there was $800 million coming through the city council, because I do sit on the finance committee, and I held up that $800 million until the next morning, because Arnie Duncan was the CEO of CPS at that time, and I got a letter that morning committing $32 million to finishing Gwendolyn Brooks. That took guts and that took leadership to make sure that our community got its fair share. And that's the same leadership I'm going to bring to the 2nd Congressional District, that we can't settle for less. We have to fight for what we believe in, and we have to have somebody who's going to fight for our community. Now, the problem with our state is Illinois is 49 out of 50 states as far as funding. We're not getting the funding necessary to make sure our kids are getting a good education. And the only reason we're 49 is because Las Vegas funds their education through the casinos and not through their state. So technically we are dead last. We have to change our formula. We have to make sure our kids get a smaller class size. Our teachers get more resources to teach our kids. And that's how we're going to change our educational process, and that's how we're going to build new leaders for tomorrow. It's not only funding, but it's also parental involvement. Our kids have to make sure that our parents get involved with our kids' future.
All right, I got to wrap you up there.
Thank you.
Mr. Fenton, you're up.
I was a tutor at the Upward Bound program while I was in college, and I tutored at Manly and Austin. We can talk all, we can speak in euphemisms, all these friendly words, and education and children are our future, and we can sing Kumbaya. But the truth is that in certain schools, they don't have books. It's just that simple. Get the kids some books. The 21st century tool is technology. Where are the computers? There's a disconnect between education and the future of the children as it is related to them. Let me give you an example. Children don't see how education fits into their future. We don't speak about our children. We don't speak about an education in terms that relate to children today. When I was in high school, as an example, no one told Ernest Fenton that if he went to college, he could achieve X, Y, Z. I was looked upon as a problem to be solved. If you listen to my show, Gospel Truth Legal Show, Social Justice Hour, in my close I say, it wasn't until I realized who I was that I was able to practice law. So for the first 7 years that I was an attorney, I didn't practice law. And I graduated from Harvard Law School. Why? Because there was a disconnect between my education and my vocation, even as a Harvard-trained attorney. So if it exists for me, then imagine how it exists for these children. So it wasn't until I found out that I was to be a servant, that I was to be a consumer advocate, was I able then to utilize my education. Thank you.
As Congresswoman, first of all, I would make sure programs like No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top were inclusive programs. I'm not an educator. I taught 1 year at Prairie State College. I totally respect teachers, but I think that when programs are formed, the people that it most affects should be a part of the decision of that program. Teachers, school board members, parents, even young people, young high school people that can participate in the conversation instead of the education and the rules coming top down, because it affects bottom up. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't think funding will ever really be fair because of how funding is done in the state of Illinois. If you're a property tax rich area, you can always go back to the voter and they can vote to raise the property taxes if they want. That was done in some of the areas here, and other areas don't vote for that, so I don't think that'll ever be fair. But what I would really like to see is public-private partnerships. There are schools like John Rogers from Ariel. He adopted a school. There's a school on the west side of Chicago I went to when I was a state rep, and every 7th grader, because of an angel, had a computer. So I think that I would want to facilitate that with businesses to adopt schools, and also schools, kids that are graduating, businesses are saying they don't have the skills. So we put schools and businesses together, then the businesses can work with the teachers or work with the students and teach them or talk about what skills are really needed so we know. The other thing, just real quickly, the way we teach or the times of school were from agricultural days, and maybe we need to look at alternatives to what we're doing now. Again, I'm not a teacher. I would have to take it back to the educators of what the best thing is to do. I also think that financial education should be a big part of what our students learn, because they go to college and handling credit cards, or you take a job and you don't know the meaning of saving or building a nest egg or investing. So I think we just need to look at some alternative things than what we're doing now with the input of educators.
Okay, so you each have an additional minute to talk about education. We're going to start with Debbie Halverson for the rebuttals. And please provide some specific policy ideas that you have to improve education. Thank you.
A specific policy issue. Well, like it has been brought up, No Child Left Behind. Instead of, you know, what has been said, I would toss it out the window. I think it's absolutely terrible. It's all it is, and all it's been is teaching to the test. I had an education advisor committee. None of my teachers liked it. So as far as a policy, we need something different. It's a national example of something that we need to go back to. The local school boards like dealing with things themselves. So we might need to go back to something else. I also think a specific policy, we haven't talked enough about our veterans. You know, I always like to bring up our veterans. A specific policy for public education is things that we could do with regards to not only our veterans, but putting vocational education back into the high schools. What hasn't happened is we have too many of our young people not going on to college, and they're not going to. So let's go like Thornton High School and a lot of the others. I went to Bloom, my husband went to Thornton.
Debbie, I got to wrap you up there.
Vocational education in the high schools.
Toy Hutchinson. We've got a lot to talk about.
It is, you know. On this topic, I agree. One of the things, too, is I remember when I was teaching, that if I had a child that came into the classroom and they had a below-level reading score, and I could move that kid, you know, a grade level or two up, if they were still below the grade they were in. So if I had a sophomore and they were reading at an 8th grade level, but I got them up to a freshman level and they were still below the grade level they were in, I didn't get any credit for that, and the school didn't get any credit for that. It's part of the reason why I don't like some of the policies for No Child Left Behind. We're not putting resources in schools so that we can bolster them and raise them up, as opposed to working to shut them down when they're not, hitting that mark on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet. So specifically, I'd work towards issues like that, because I don't think that we're teaching 21st century tools to kids for a 21st century economy. I do believe that we're teaching in a way that was more apropos for 50, 60, 70, and 80 years ago. So I think new ways to teach is what's going to be needed.
One of the things that I would like to see is for the federal government to re-implement the funding levels for CDBG money, which is Community Development Block Grant money. That money was used for after-school programs, for early childhood education, because we all know our kids are getting out of school 2:30, 3:15, but yet our parents don't get home until 5, 5:30, sometimes 6 o'clock. What are our kids doing in that time frame? Well, when Bill Clinton was in office, we in the city of Chicago got over $300 million of CDBG money. We created all kind of programs out of that money. But under the Bush era, we are down to $70 million. That money does not go far. So when we talk about education, getting kids in after-school programs where they can possibly get some tutoring and do some things after school, whether it be athletics or just getting inside their books, we need to re-implement that program in order to make our city whole again in the 2nd Congressional District.
Mr. Fenton, you have 1 minute.
If we can fund a 10-year war in Iraq and Afghanistan, then we can fund early childhood education for every child across the country. If we can fund a 10-year war in Iraq and Afghanistan, then we can provide student loan debt forgiveness for those who go on and work in fields that are honorable, that give back to the community. We can do that. If we can fund a war in Iraq, a 10-year war, then perhaps we could also fund the policy that they have in a lot of European communities, which is free education, okay? And I'm talking about college education. We can fund that as well. My policy, simple, young lady, books in every classroom for every child, policy number 1. Second policy, computer access for all children. Computer access. Another policy, we can hardwire we can create hot spots in every community. We can fund that as well. All right, thank you.
Again, no matter what we do, there are going to be communities that have and communities that have not. And I would like to see something now, this is probably more state in a way, but I'd like to see something where we actually can pay teachers more to go to more distressed communities, because it's very easy for New Trier and those places that have more money to pay the teachers with the master's degrees and all of that. But in communities such as Fort Heights, where, as was said, they don't have books, or they didn't have books, or they don't have the latest technology. Sometimes those are not the easiest places to teach. So I think that we should, even though I know teachers do it from their heart, I'd like to think that, but also I think we need to incentivize those who are in the most distressed communities. And like I said before, I think we need to bring business involved in it too, because we're never going to be able to afford everything the children need, even though I do agree with Mr. Fenton, what he said, if we can afford a war, we can afford to educate our children.
All right, our next topic is jobs in the economy. The 2nd District needs jobs. Give us specific examples of how you will create employment opportunities, especially for the young people of this district, and how do you plan to help small business owners and stimulate further economic development in the Southland? We'll start with Troy Hutchinson.
The second congressional district is actually I think right in the midst of what could be a renaissance. We have so much going for us. We have rail, we have water, we have intermodals that are now in place that are making connections between two existing airports in the south part and the proposed third airport, which we all know is something that this community desperately needs. Plus, the extension of the CTA Red Line and all the other mass transportation infrastructure projects that we talk about with adults and grown folks who are trained for those things. Now let's talk about young people. Young people we talked about vocational training in the high schools. We also need to link the community college system to get these folks trained to work in those specific jobs. If we invest in manufacturing, if we invest in logistics, if we invest in air, rail, and water, if we invest in those natural resources that we already have right here in the second congressional district, we can start to create jobs and see a growth that we've not seen in 50, 60 years right now. This area has been passed over for decades, just passed over. Everything from empty industrial yards on the south side to blighted parks and blighted strip centers that go through, or strip mall areas that go down through Kankakee. If we start to pay more attention about attracting and retaining the businesses that are here and then training workers to be able to work in those places, then we can do a whole lot more. Now, one of the things I also want to say about young people and the minimum wage, I got a question coming in here, and I think it was from the town hall earlier, and he said he's under 18 and he has to work for $7.75 an hour. If you're a kid that's under 18 and you need to help support your family, we need to pay attention to the fact that our minimum wage laws right now still keep you in poverty. They still keep you in poverty. So we need to be able to make sure that everybody who can contribute, everybody that should be working has an opportunity to, and that the money they live is something they can support families on.
As far as jobs are concerned, again, I've created more jobs than anybody running in this particular race at this particular time. We had a small fight, and I said earlier, with Walmart in the city of Chicago, where we were able to bring Walmart into the area to create 4,000 jobs off of the Bishop Ford Expressway. Walmart's just going to be the anchor. We have a Ross coming in, Planet Fitness, Bare Feet Shoes, Ann & Linens, and a host of other stores coming into the area. That's an incubator for jobs, but those are just starter jobs. When I get to Congress, we're going to make sure that we get that third airport built, because what it took to get Walmart in my ward is the same dedication and know-how and skills and ability to get that third airport built. Now, once that third airport is built, that's 15,000 jobs to start. Once it's fully developed, 150,000 jobs. But once we connect it with our ports, our rail, and our roads, we're creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in this particular region. That's huge when we're talking about reducing crime. We talk about the housing stock. All those things are related when we start talking about creating jobs. Now, Keebler. Many of you all may not know, Keebler, the snow cone, are made in the 9th Ward, across the country, in the 9th Ward. We helped them expand a few years ago to create another 300-400 jobs in the area. We need somebody who knows how to create jobs and get things done, bring people together, whether we have differences. And one of the reasons why the third airport is not built right now is because we haven't brought all 3 counties together. We're infighting with Cook County, Kankakee County, and Will County. You build an airport with a few 100,000 jobs, there's enough for everybody. There's enough to go around. That's the kind of leadership we need. We need a job creator if we're going to save our community. Thank you.
Ernest Fenton.
Alderman Bill is rather creative. He must not have read my bio, because when I was 25 years old, I started my first business. I imported jewelry and artifacts from Africa while I was in law school and created 10 jobs. I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years. I have a payroll, Alderman Bill, of $500,000 today. I've been creating jobs for 17 years. I've never held a job in my life. The policy for job creation is stop trying to create jobs, stop trying to give young people jobs, and make young people innovators. Stop killing the ingenuity of young people in our educational system and tell them how they'll take their place upon or in this global economy. That's how we will create jobs. I'll reserve my other minute for the next session. Thank you.
Small business is actually the backbone of our country. We think of big businesses and we incentivize those, but really it's small businesses that are the backbone of the country. When I was in the legislature, I worked on a bill actually with the now President Barack Obama, and I say it was my bill. He just helped me pass it in the Senate. But we gave tax incentives and tax credits to small business to either come to Illinois, stay in Illinois, or to expand their business because, as I said, we always incentivize the big businesses. I would like to see the work of the Small Business Administration expanded. So they can help more businesses and also help startup businesses. They don't do that as much. We also need more money put into research and development so we can help the entrepreneurs and the innovators and people like that. I had a meeting with the National Association of Manufacturers, and what they talked about, it costs 20% more for them to do business in the United States. So we need to look at what we're doing legislative-wise in hurting our businesses to not be able to move forward. The other thing, I'm going to call it the Robin Kelly Contractor Diversity Program. I'm going to make sure when there's government projects that hometown people get the hometown jobs, because not enough of that is done now. And also there's legislation that needs to be tweaked to make sure that happens. But as you know, it takes a long time to change legislation. But I will put together a program with public input and a tip line or a hotline.
As I talk about everywhere I go, number one issue is jobs. I've created jobs. I have relationships with people in Congress. The first thing I did when I got there was to sit down with the unions, with Centerpoint, with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the environmentalists, with BNSF, with Union Pacific, because they called me up and they said, Debbie, we could possibly lose 7,000 jobs if we can't get everybody to come together. We had to get easements. We had to do everything because there was a chance of losing jobs. So we created 7,000 jobs at an intermodal in Joliet. I want to do that same thing in the 2nd Congressional District, this new district that I plan on representing, because we've got the same rail. We've got the intermodal that can be put in Harvey or in Kankakee. This Calumet region can be the inland port of the country. We have the opportunity to do the same things that we were able to do when I created 7,000 jobs at an inland port at the intermodal in Joliet. We need to continue the advanced manufacturing. Manufacturing today is not smokestacks. We can do these advanced manufacturing, logistics with MyJack, with Finkel, with Funklinko. I was at something that we talked about, all of these different jobs that we can bring. But it's tied into the community colleges and the $500,000 and the grants that we can get, because we need to train people here to have the jobs here. CN, the railroad in Harvey, just gave Governor State University $100,000 to train people to actually work in their logistics departments. We need people that have these kind of relationships that can hit the ground running on day one in Congress to work on projects just as that.
All right, so here's your bonus minute. Topic is jobs in the economy. First up is Alderman Beal. You have 1 minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a jobs plan. A jobs plan from one end of this district to the other to create jobs from the city all the way to Kankakee. That is a job plan that is not just something that we just talking about. That is something that we're going to build upon as far as what I've already done. We have to have a comprehensive job plan if we're going to create jobs in this district. It can't be something that we're just going about our business wondering if we're going to do the right thing. You have to have a plan. The red line extension, which is a $1.6 billion extension from 95th to 130th Street. By me being chairman of transportation right now in the city of Chicago, we're going to extend that red line. We're also doing a red line upgrade. All of these things are creating jobs in the community, and we've already partnered with our community colleges in order to make sure that we hire those 400 people, because we're hiring an additional 400 people when we shut down the red line in order to make sure we get people from downtown, well, from 95th Street down to Cermak. However, we created a community benefits agreement. A community benefits agreement, nobody else on this panel has ever drafted a community benefits agreement. I've drafted two. One with Walmart to make sure they give back to the community, make sure that they open up their doors to entrepreneurs that want to do business with them, that they hire so many people from the community. And then we have a community benefits agreement with CTA, who they're going to do the right thing. So these are the again, and I'm gonna really emphasize, these are the skills and the leadership abilities that we all need. We do not have the time to send someone who doesn't know about these things in the 2nd Congressional District to send to Washington.
All right.
We need somebody who knows.
Thank you, Alderman Beal. Ernest Fenton.
Congressmen don't create jobs. I almost feel sorry for you all sitting in the audience. This is no time for political rhetoric. Congressmen don't create jobs. Aldermen don't create jobs. We create opportunities for the real job makers to create jobs. So when Alderman Beal, as an example, talked about Walmart, he didn't create the job. He did his job as a public servant to allow or afford Walmart the opportunity to create jobs. Ernest Fenton creates jobs. When the checks are cut in my office, they have my name on it, not Walmart, not Keebler, not the U.S. Congressional Office. But my job won't be to create jobs when I go to Congress, per se. My job is to create the opportunities to create jobs. Now, what do I know about job creation? I know a lot about it because for 17 years, I have been nothing but an employer and never an employee. I paid millions of dollars as an employer. I have been a small business owner for 17 years across industries. I don't know what the rest of the people on the panel have done. I haven't checked their background that much, but what I do know is about me. I know what it takes to create jobs. And I'm also very clear on what my responsibility is as your next congressman. Thank you.
I realized when I answered the question, I forgot to mention, you asked about helping young people. Again, public-private partnerships, places like MyJack, getting involved in the schools, I think that helps create the connection and the jobs for young people. When I was in the Treasurer's office, we had a venture capital program, and we created hundreds of jobs, or gave the opportunity for businesses to create hundreds of jobs across the state of Illinois, from downstate to daycare centers for farmers and technology places on the west side of Chicago. So we invested in businesses that were going to invest in startups, and that did help create hundreds of jobs all over. The other thing is, when I was in the legislature, I tried to pass a bill that gave more incentive from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity to businesses that wanted to move to distressed areas, but they would not let me pass that bill, because as long as you came to Illinois, they didn't care where you came to. But to me, the rich just get richer when we have projects like that. North Carolina actually has a program that they do give more to businesses that come to distressed areas. I will go to Congress and learn about that program, then hopefully come back and share it with the state and local officials here. Thank you.
So so that Mr. Fenton doesn't have to check my background, I am a small business owner. My husband and I own two companies. And I believe that we need to start incubators and small startups so that people can share in the resources. If you have a building and people want to come in, they can share a receptionist, they can share in the electric and the heat, and then start their small business and eventually grow out of it. It was an idea that we had, and some people came to me, and we're working on that in a Kankakee building and somewhere in Chicago Heights. And I think that that is a great way for somebody so they don't have to get there and deal with all that overhead. So that is another idea of how we can build some businesses. And again, going to Congress on day one, working with relationships, talking to people, and getting things done, I think is the best way to get things started and creating jobs.
Before I was in the Senate for a solid 5 months, I laid the groundwork and passed legislation to build the Indiana Expressway. Going to connect Indiana to Illinois from 55 to 65, create 6,000 jobs up front, and create and open up brand new economic development corridors that haven't been seen in this part of the state in decades. Now, that plan was contemplated during the Burnham Plan. Now, when you start to add the Indiana Expressway with the third airport, with the intermodals, with the fact that Governor State is about to accept freshmen and build student housing and start to come, I mean, with the connections to the community colleges, we are about to see a renaissance here if we can all work together. Now, when I absolutely agree in incubators, I absolutely agree in investing in small business, because what we talk about when people in government create opportunities, create jobs, that's also contracts. There's also subcontracts. There's also all kinds of other businesses that can take advantage of that and expand out into the community. It's a cycle that happens. And when you invest in, when you take the time to create the opportunities, to create jobs, which is what we talk about with transportation infrastructure, because I'm not an engineer, I don't know how to lay a road, but we did pass a legislation that made it possible to happen. Investment in this area has a trickle effect from education to small business to public-private partnerships, because there's no way the state's going to be able to afford to do all this on our own. But investment in this area is long overdue, and because of it, we pay some of the highest taxes in the state. We pay higher property taxes. Our commute times are longer than anybody else, which is a tax. We're paying higher taxes on our property with lower performing schools. The time is now. The time is absolutely now to do what we need to do to invest in this area, and I think we can do that if we're all working together.
All right, our final round is violence prevention. And here is the question. As Wendell mentioned, our hearts are heavy with the death of 15-year-old Hadia Pendleton, so many other young people in the Chicago area, in the 2nd District, senselessly murdered. If you are elected, what measures will you take to protect our children and stop the gun violence that not only plagues the city of Chicago, but this country? We're going to start with Alderman Beal.
Thank you, Gaynor. Well, first of all, in 2010, when I was chairman of the Police and Fire Committee, I passed the City of Chicago's gun ordinance. We passed comprehensive, common sense gun legislation in the City of Chicago. A federal judge overturned the City of Chicago's gun ordinance and made us draft a new one, and that's what I passed in 2010. The problem is the federal government has failed to act on common sense gun legislation. But now, because we've had such a rash of violence plaguing our schools and our communities, now they're starting to do something about it. Well, I've been fighting this fight for a very long time. I didn't take a pledge to stop gun violence. I put an ordinance in to stop gun violence. Until we get the assault weapons off our street, assault weapons are made to kill our community. They are not built to protect our community. I'm a hunter. I hunt every fall. I've never seen a hunter in the woods with an assault weapon. We have to ban the assault weapons. We have to ban the high magazine clips. We have to make sure that people get background checks and they are licensed because too many people with mental illness are buying guns. We have to close the gun shop loophole, because the second tier market for gun trafficking is the gun shows, because nobody's checking the people at the gun shows. So you need somebody that's going to go to Washington that knows this issue inside and out, because I fought the fight in the city of Chicago. I know the ins and outs of what needs to be done. But again, it goes back to education and jobs. If we're going to stop violence in our community, we have to put people to work. We have to make sure our kids are educated and stop putting our guns in the hands of people with mental illness and people that don't mean our community any good. We have to have a no tolerance level when it comes to this gun issue. I'm very passionate about it, and we need to pass it, and pass it now.
Ernest Fenton.
Crime in our community, violence in our community, is really not an issue of guns. This is not a gun war. This is a cultural war. This is a moral war. This is a spiritual war. And we're doing the young people in the 2nd District and across America a disservice by mischaracterizing this issue, thus leading us to the wrong first, second, and final steps in its resolution. Now, I'm a military veteran. I know about guns. I was trained to utilize automatic weapons. Were they designed for one purpose and one purpose only? Absolutely. But that's not our issue. Our primary issue is the devalue of life, the absence of identity in this future that we are developing and sculpting and trying to sell them. The fact that there are no alternatives. The fact that we feed them an identity that says that they are a problem to be solved as opposed to our future. I too was a problem child. The issue of crime and violence in the 2nd District, let's be clear here, is an issue related to young men of color. Let's just call it what it is. Let's start right there. Until we can weave young men of color into the fabric of America, into the fabric of the 2nd District, we're going to continuously have the issue of crime. Thank you.
I have been involved in violence prevention for many, 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 many years with Parents Anonymous, trying to stop child abuse, domestic violence. My first legislation I passed when I was in the legislature was stopping straw purchases of guns, people who can legally have guns buying for people that shouldn't. This is something near and dear to my heart. I lost a volunteer that was murdered by her husband. I lost a cousin that was also murdered by her husband. We have an epidemic. We have a public health problem. We are losing a generation of young people. Our next president, our next nurse, our next teacher, our next parent, because of what is going on in the community. Alderman Beal laid it out, you know, background checks, assault ban weapons, and on and on and on. And I am calling for reasonable gun safety. I'm not against guns. I grew up in a family of cops. My grandfather was a hunter. I have cousins that are cops in Chicago and New York. But we cannot continue in this vein. Families are not going to want to live here. Businesses are not going to want to move here or stay here because they are afraid. Our young people should not be afraid to go to school. And also, I've had people tell me they don't want to go to the movies anymore. They don't want to ride the train anymore. I am a person very proud of getting an A, or I should say an F, from the NRA. I am very proud of that. I said that's one F I'm proud of. I don't need to go back and study. I don't need to take the tests over. There's just no excuse. I'm ready to stand with the president and pass everything that he wants to pass, but it is a community issue. We need better education. We need jobs for our folks. We need after-school activity, but it's an epidemic in our community.
As was said, violence prevention is more than just guns. It's been very frustrating to watch what's been going on. I believe that violence prevention is an overwhelming problem, and it needs a common sense, comprehensive approach. I applaud the President and the Vice President to finally have this national conversation. I believe in universal background checks. I believe that we should have more penalties on the straw buyers. I believe that we need a whole lot of things that we need to go after the gun problems, the criminals. And it's a shame that I'm having to watch a commercial that portrays me as someone that has this A from the NRA and a $500,000 ad buy when the problems is also mental illness. The state of Illinois has cut $187 million out of the mental health services. The city of Chicago closed down half of their mental health facilities. We need to be educating our young people. We need to be figuring out how we get guns out of the hands of criminals now, not just more rhetoric when Cook County has an assault weapons ban, but yet we have more murders in the city of Chicago than anywhere in the country. Less than 2% of those murders can be attributed to the assault weapon. When are we going to have a true conversation about how to get guns out of the hands of criminals that are causing this carnage? Let's talk about what we can truly do to get the guns out of the hands of criminals. I'm a victim of domestic abuse. I was a single mom growing up, and my poor kids had to watch. I don't talk about this. Most killings are done by spouses who harm their wives. I am not new to this. And it's a shame to watch what's happening here. I am going to stand up and fight to make sure criminals don't get guns.
Toy Hutchinson.
I want to say something about Hadia. She's 15 years old. My daughter is 14. She'll be 15 in June. Hadia was a majorette, so she loved to dance. My daughter is on the Palms team at Homewood Flossmoor, and she loves to dance. And today, I didn't have words because this was an honor student whose life was cut short way too early, and we've seen it over and over and over again. And part of the problem with the conversation that we have about guns and gun violence in particular is that we lump it into one single thing. There's a different complexion to mass shootings than there is to the violence in urban areas, and we all know it. When we talk about pulling our young men back into the fabric of society, I look at my two boys. My 16-year-old son, who's almost 6 feet tall, who I know that nobody's going to ask him if his mother is a senator before they wonder if he's just up to no good. There are systemic and structural forces that are working in tandem to keep communities where they are in conditions that sometimes seem insurmountable. Sometimes they seem insurmountable. When you have a minor drug conviction and you can't get a student loan, you can't find some place to live, you can't pass a background check to get a job. If you are in an area where it takes you more than a long time to walk to school, but there's no after-school activities for you, and everybody's telling you just say no, but you're just trying to figure out how to make a way to get to where you're trying to go. If your only meal happens at school. We have structural and systemic policy things that are going towards keeping our communities from being able to find a way out. And there has to be a whole lot more emphasis on giving kids a reason to live instead of not caring whether they die. This is a comprehensive issue. Background checks. The biggest thing we need to worry about background checks is that there are so many holes in it that people can pass background checks and legally purchase firearms. I don't think our Second Amendment rights are under assault. I really don't, because all rights come with responsibilities. All of them do. The First Amendment, believe in it. You can't yell fire in a crowded room. And when you have conversations that only push the hot buttons, I'll add it to the minute, because there's more.
Okay, so this is going to be our final 1-minute opportunity to talk about violence prevention, guns, get it all out. Anthony Beal.
Once again, it's about giving our kids an opportunity to be active, to do constructive after-school programs and give them something to do other than hanging out on the street, making sure they get a good education. But at the same time, we cannot let the NRA off the hook, because they have more guns going out the back door than they got going out the front door. Since the president started talking about gun legislation, their sales have over tripled. There are lines outside the door for people to buy assault weapons. It's a reason for that, because, again, they're not there to protect our community. Assault weapons are there to harm our community. So we have to stop them, and stop them now. We cannot sugarcoat this issue. There's no reason a person should have an assault weapon. So, again, if the president and the Senate and the House would just look at the ordinance that I drafted in 2010 and passed through the City Council, we can solve a lot of these problems, because that was comprehensive, common sense gun legislation. So hopefully they look to the City of Chicago, because our police superintendent went to Washington to share his views about what's going on in the City of Chicago and the violence that we're plagued with. I've been to more funerals for innocent people with gun violence than anybody. And I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing our young people gunned down and cut short of their future. It breaks my heart to see a mother on TV, or to go to their house and have to talk to them and console them about what just happened to their child. We have to take a hard stance on this gun issue, ladies and gentlemen. This is not something we can tiptoe around. It's not something we can sugarcoat. We need firm, stern gun legislation right now. Thank you.
Ernest Fenton.
Per capita, Sweden has more guns per capita than America. But check the murder rate. My heart goes out to any victim of gun violence. It's happened in my family. What I can't do, however, people, is simply have a conversation about change that is only temporary, as opposed to having a real conversation about transformation where we can change lives and really stop people from being killed. When I'm your congressman, I'm only dealing with transformation. Because we can talk and feel good right now and make this conversation about guns, but it's a disingenuous conversation. Sweden, per capita, has more guns than America, but check the murder rate. I am a veteran. I know the power of guns and weapons. Semi-automatic rifles are intended to kill. Should one be allowed to purchase them? Maybe, maybe not. But let's pretend that they do. Let me tell you what that they are. Let me tell you what my policy would be. You can purchase them, but you just can't take them home. I'd like to have a white Siberian tiger. I can purchase it, but I just can't take it home. But more important than that conversation, and I hopefully that sticks with you, let's talk for real about what's happening. Crime, gun violence in the 2nd District equals young black men, young men of color, young Latino men. So until we start meeting those young men where they are, talking to them, taking them into our fold, we are not going to resolve the issue of crime and violence in our community. I look forward to serving you as your next congressman. I am Attorney Ernest B. Fenton.
I think it's taken a long time for us to address the problem of guns and violence because of what I think people perceive who is doing the killing and who is getting killed. And that's why I think that, you know, when Newtown happened and some of the other places happened, that's why it got so much attention. And of course, when you think about a mass murder, like if a Boeing crash as opposed to 2 people in an airplane, we don't make as big of a deal. But I think that is part of the issue. But it is an epidemic. My Shiro is here that introduced me to a lot of the parents of the murdered children, and I can tell you, they don't want to wait. They want to get something done. They don't want to hear our excuses. It's not just about guns. I realize that it's about education, jobs, and after school, but I've had many tears lately spending a lot of time with them, and they are disappointed that we haven't done more, and they feel like we don't care about their children, and we just have to do more, and I am committed. And I'm going to say this, whether I win or lose, I will not forget this and what has happened in this area because we need more people paying attention to all of our young people and older folks too. Nobody should live like this. Nobody should live in fear. So I'm ready to stand with the president and I'm ready to break the cycle, you know, of killing and murder and violence and domestic abuse, sexual assault and all of that. But we do have a culture of violence and we have to break the cycle. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate, the culture of violence is more than just guns, as people have said. But still, we have to close the gun show loophole. We must have universal background checks. We must have stiffer penalties on the straw buyers. Never should someone else be able to go buy a gun and then give it to someone who can't make it through the background check. But like has been said, people are falling through the cracks on the background check. Beef up regularly that national background check, that database. We need to do what we can get done now. Let's not wait. Let's get the things done that we can do now. Go after the criminals. But the gangs and the problems in Chicago, it's a shame that the big mass murders get all the attention, but we have our own carnage, our own problems right here every day. Let's not forget that too.
What I was going to finish saying was that we're in a moment in time. We are in a moment in time right now where I think the country is evolving, and I think people are having conversations that they weren't comfortable having before. And at this point, you know, it was one of the biggest reasons why I signed on to the assault weapons ban and the ban on the high-capacity magazines. And I just signed on to another bill that makes you have to report if you've lost your gun within 3 days, because there are a ton of people who lose, you know, and they end up being used in crimes later, and nobody knows what happened to those firearms. We are at a time where we got to bring all people to the table, people who come from this from all kinds of different perspectives, because that's what happens in a democracy. You got to figure out how to tell people your story and get them to come to some place where you are. And that doesn't mean you push them away when they slightly disagree. It means let me talk to you a little bit longer. Let me explain this to you a little bit better. We are in a moment in time right now. And the comprehensive approach that the president's laid out is something I absolutely stand in favor of. I listened to Gabby Gifford's husband today talk at the hearing, the Senate hearing today. And what was most powerful about it was he said this is not at all about infringing on Second Amendment rights. This is about understanding that rights come with responsibilities. And we all have to take responsibility for where we are right now. So I stand humbled by the fact that we can even be in this conversation, and I'm appreciative of the fact that this conversation has now expanded, because it's so much bigger than just individual one-time, one quick fixes. It's bigger than that. We have a systemic problem that we have to deal with, and it's going to take all hands on deck, and it goes from mental health to education to, you know, common sense gun legislation that we can all get behind so that we can get something done right now. That's a fair conversation, and it's a necessary conversation, and I honestly, in my heart, believe we can do it.
So we're going to start to wrap things up here. This last segment is going to be final thoughts from our candidates. You will have 3 minutes, I know, 3 minutes, to really just give us your closing argument on why the voters of the 2nd District should select you when they go to the polls on February 26th for the primary. We'll start with Ernest Fenton.
I appreciate everyone sitting still through all of this. I started off earlier and shared with you that the foundation of my candidacy is that stability in housing affects more than homes. I've been out here doing the work. I've been at the forefront of the foreclosure crisis. Stability in housing affects more than homes. See, if your neighbor loses their home, then it's going to be more difficult to attract and support local businesses, because as our communities become graveyards almost, if you take a look at the city of Harvey, if you drive through South Shore, not through the main roads, not just down Dixie Highway through Markham, but go inside and really take a look. And some of our communities appear to be graveyards. How can one, without stability in housing, attract and support local businesses? Local businesses and businesses that are looking to relocate rely on stable communities to pull from its workforce, also to consume its goods and services. If you don't attract and support local businesses, then likewise one cannot expect to have jobs in your community. Small businesses account for the majority of the jobs in the United States of America. Oftentimes we talk about the big boxes, the Walmarts, Keebler, the Ninth Ward we've heard about. But those are not the job creators in our community. They're the small businesses. In the 2nd District in particular, go down to Kankakee and take a look at the small business infrastructure. It's lacking. If you don't have businesses and communities, you don't have jobs. So then that means our young people that we're so concerned about educating won't have a mentor in the community that can connect their education to their future, their promise. If you don't have that mentor in the community, that small businessman, to take your child into the fold, then we all know an idle mind is what? No one? A devil's playground. Crime, people. Stability in housing affects more than homes. That's the root of your crime, not a gun. Remember, I would love to have a white Siberian tiger. I just can't take it home. So we have to stabilize our community. See, once again, this is not a gun issue. This is not a job issue per se. This is not an education issue either. This is a cultural issue. This is about you and me and what we really care about, how much we're really willing to invest in our communities. This is a moral issue. This is a spiritual issue. Now, to resolve those issues, there are certain tools and structures that need to be put in place. Now, that's when we start talking about jobs. That's when we start talking about businesses. That's when we start talking about the Home Affordable Modification Program. But if you mischaracterize the issue, people, you're going to continuously get the wrong result. If you start off wrong, guess what's going to happen? You're going to end up wrong. Ernest B. Fenton is not a politician. Be clear on that. It was not until I found my purpose in life to be an advocate that I began to practice law. In the same spirit that I have and my firm has taken the lead in the foreclosure crisis and consumer advocacy across Cook County and Will County and Kankakee County. I'm going to take that same passion, that same zeal, that same zest, the same understanding, the same integrity to serve you. Thank you. I am Attorney Ernest B. Fenton, your next congressman in the 2nd District.
I too want to thank all of you for listening and your attentiveness. I really, really appreciate it. I have 20 years of successful governmental experience, every level but the federal government. But also I've worked in higher ed, I've worked in healthcare, and I've worked in social service. I know that I've been a change agent. I know I've been a unifier. I know I have given the opportunity for job creation. And despite the legislation that I've passed, what is most important to me was the constituent services, whether the constituent was as a legislator, when I worked in the treasurer's office, when I worked in social service, or when I worked at Bradley University. One of the things I'm most proud of, when I was at Bradley University, I created 2 scholarships, one scholarship and one endowment for black students at Bradley. Because what was happening, black students were getting in, but they weren't able to stay because they didn't have the money. And I'm proud to say that scholarship and that endowment is 20 years old. So I know I've been a change agent for many, many young people that I call all of my kids. And I want to take my passion for helping people, for being a change agent, for being a fighter, and for being a survivor. When I think about my life, people see me now, oh, you've been this, or you have this. But also, if any of you have got my mailings, you know I've had days when my children were young where we ate Cheerios for dinner. My son hates when I tell this story because he said they're calling them Cheerios boy now. But they didn't mind because they didn't know why we were eating the Cheerios, but I knew because that's what I could afford. And, you know, life happens. I didn't grow up poor. I grew up in a middle-income family. We had a small mom-and-pop grocery store. I worked behind the cash register starting at 8 years old. Why? Because my grandfather told me to get behind there and start helping out. But life happens when you're an adult. And I got a divorce, and my kids and I, we struggled the best way that we could, where I know a lot of people are struggling now. My son did everything he was supposed to do, got his certifications, did all the things he was supposed to do. When new owners came in, he lost his job the next day. He lost his job, he lost his health care, and probably lost some of his self-esteem. And I know a lot of people are like that right now. He tells me, Mom, why go get your master's? I was working with people like that because they couldn't find a job. I don't do things for the money. I don't do things for the title. I do things because I'm passionate about it. I have to go to work every day, and I want to love what I do, and I want to feel like I'm making a difference in the community. I have relationships already in D.C. with various congressmen and definitely with the president. I want to be an ally to the president, but I will not be a rubber stamp. I can assure you that I will fight for the 2nd Congressional District and our needs, and I know that this will be, or it is a wonderful place to live, but I know under my leadership it will be an even better place. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. You have a lot of decisions to make. There are many good candidates, and I guess you have the 5 best here, but there are 17 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and you have decisions to make. Of course, I think I'm the best. To give you a little background on me, I grew up here. I went to Bloom. Don't hold that against me, Rich Central. My husband grew up in Harvey. He went to Thornton. So we have our own little debates at home with the rivalry of Bloom and Thornton. But we grew up here. We've lived here. We raised our children here. I care. I've seen the ups and downs. Jim still drives through Harvey and tells me exactly what used to be there that isn't there anymore, but what could be there. And in the middle 90s, I became a township clerk. And then in 1996, I became a state senator, where I served for 12 years. I became the first woman ever female Senate Majority Leader, because Senate President Emil Jones said women deserve to be leaders too. And it was important to me to pass things like prescription drugs, senior citizen prescription drug bills for those who need to save money. It was important to me to pass ethics bills and to do things for education and transportation. But then in 2008, when then U.S. Senator Barack Obama and Dick Durbin suggested I run for Congress because Jerry Weller was retiring, I said, "You're crazy. I'm in the state Senate where I love, but Barack Obama was going to be our president, and he needed somebody to stand by him to pass things like health care for all, and for our Wall Street reform, and for the stimulus bill, and for things that we needed for this country," and that's what I did. But it was a Republican district, and it was hard to keep, and of course 2010 was a bad year for Democrats, and a Tea Party young man did beat me. But it didn't matter because I believe God has a plan, and that's why I'm back now in a redistricted district, which includes part of my old district and this district where I served as a state senator. And yes, I did grow up in a lower middle class family. My dad worked 2 jobs. He was self-employed. I grew up without health care. I watched my mom battle breast cancer with no health care. And that's why I swore someday, if I ever had a chance, I was going to make sure nobody ever had to grow up like I did. Because she didn't have health care again until she was 65, and that was Medicare. And I knew if I ever had a chance, not only was I going to pass health care for all, but I was going to make sure Medicare and Social Security was preserved. Never was I going to raise the rate for Social Security or ever privatize Medicare. I was going to stand for our senior citizens, which I was able to do. And if ever I get that chance to go back to Congress, I'm going to stand for those things. I'm going to stand for the things that the little guy doesn't have a voice for. There are so many special interests out there, you can't even believe it. But there's nobody for the little guy that I want to be the voice for. So if I'm blessed enough to go back, I won't let you down because there is a lot of need. And nobody has those relationships. Nobody created the 7,000 jobs. Nobody was able to bring a veterans home to Joliet. But we need somebody that has those relationships, and I hope you believe that's me. Thank you.
Toy Hutchinson.
I want to say thank you to YMP for a really, really wonderful conversation tonight. It's been pretty expansive, and we don't always get opportunities to do that. Thank you, Gaynor, for your moderation, and thank you to you for sitting through all of this and for coming out to see us every chance you get to really make an informed decision. My name is Toy Hutchinson, and I've been the state senator since 2009, and I told the story in the beginning that I just come in the midst of an impeachment trial. Now, what brings me to public service in the first place is that those 3 kids that I call mine, I usually don't lead with Senator. I say I'm PJ, Cameron, and Ryan's mom. And everything I do because I'm not supposed to just leave the world a better place for me. It's for them. And if I can fix it for them, then I can fix it for all the kids across this state. So education issues are personal to me. The first things I started to sponsor when I was in the state Senate were after-school care programs. I was a chief sponsor of the After School Matters bill because the most dangerous time of the day for an unsupervised kid is between 3 and 6, the time they get out of school and an adult gets home. Right now, my family struggled with foreclosure. My family struggled with health care issues. We lost my grandfather. And while we were dealing with the end-of-life decisions we had to make, we would not have been able to keep him in the comfort of his own home and provide him the dignity that he needed in his transition if we didn't have Medicare and Social Security. If we didn't have that, he chose to not buy into Medicare Part D because he had veterans benefits. He served this country. But if you don't live anywhere near a veterans facility, it's like not having benefits at all. So we watched him struggle, and we came together as a family to do everything we could to take care of him in those last days. Medicare and Social Security are the greatest anti-poverty programs this country's ever seen, and we cannot allow it to be, in the name of protected, be dismantled by people who don't believe in it. So I want to be in this conversation because there are things that are very serious to me on a personal level, as a wife, as a mother, as a granddaughter, as a public servant, as a human being. When you look at somebody who you don't agree with, I can disagree with you all day long. If you can just try to look at another person like a human being, that they come from another prison, they come from another place, and in this messy thing called democracy, we all have to be in it together somehow. We all have to. And it doesn't come wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow. It's hard. But it is so worth the fight. I'm in this race because I believe in us. I believe in us from the northern part of the district to the southern part of the district. I believe that we need representation that will fight for us first. I believe that we need somebody who will go to Washington, D.C. and really pay attention to the service part of the title, the public service part. So my name is Toy Hutchinson. Please check out www.toyhutchinson.com. You can find out more about what it is I stand for. But know this, there isn't a day that goes by that I wouldn't give my entire heart and soul to what this district deserves. Because it's not about who I can be. It's about what we can do. Thank you.
How many Christians do we have in the house? Just raise your hands. All right. So you all know that he who is last will be first, and who is first will be last. Amen. I'm Anthony Bill, and I'm running for Congress. And let me just say, I was born and raised in this district. Born and raised. I'm still in the same house that I was born in, and I'm raising my family in the exact same house. Have never moved away, never went anywhere. I had the opportunity to move away, but I decided to stay and make a difference. I did not grow up in anybody's ward organization. I was not grown in anybody's political family. I cared about my community, and I ran for office because I wanted to make a difference, because I saw my community going the wrong way. That's the same reason I'm running for Congress today, because we need leadership that's going to take this district the right way. In 1999, I was one of the youngest elected officials elected in the state of Illinois. And now I'm a former chairman of the Police and Fire Committee, former chairman of the Historic Landmarks Committee, and I'm the current chairman of the Transportation Committee. I believe that being alderman is a training ground for congressmen. When you look at alderman, former alderman Louis Gutierrez, Congressman Bobby Rush, Congressman Danny Davis were all former aldermen of the city of Chicago. On February 26th, Anthony Beale will be a former alderman of the city of Chicago, because you all are going to send me to Washington in order to make a difference. But it's the leadership and everything that we've talked about today are the things that we deal with every single day in the city council. I don't need on-the-job training, because we've dealt with housing, we've dealt with education, we've dealt with public safety. We've dealt with all those things in the city of Chicago, and I want to take my leadership ability to the south side and the south suburban area all the way to Kankakee and to Will County. I'm excited about this opportunity, and ladies and gentlemen, just look at the record. And you can check my website at www.billforcongress.com, and you will see I have a proven track record of accomplishments, fighting for what I believe in, and I have integrity, and those are the skills that we need at this particular time, in this particular place, to elect the next congressman. So I'm looking forward to your support. Anthony Beale for Congress of the 2nd Congressional District. Thank you all so much, and God bless you.
And so as I close us out, some people say that, the democracy lies right here, but who would ever thought a poor little black boy from Chicago Heights would be the coordinator of such an event? The theme of this is the future of the Southland. And for all the young people who participated in the town hall meeting, this is to let them know that you can go against all odds, do the work, faith and deeds. And so whomever's elected, please don't get too comfortable. Please, because there's some young emerging leaders in the Southland that you all better pay attention to. So I'd also like to thank Rich Central, School District 227, Dr. Donnelly, who's the superintendent, the Board of Education here. I'd like to thank all the candidates. Gaynor Hall, thank you very much. And to my timekeeper, school board members, Creek Monique 201, Kimberly Sanders. You all have a good evening and God bless.